One day, Shedeur Sanders was the most talked about rookie in the NFL. Fresh off a preseason that made people whisper franchise quarterback for the first time in Cleveland since, well, ever. The next day, he's gone. Cut. Shown the door like some journeyman camp arm who couldn't read a playbook. And the reason Stefanski gave? Not mechanics. Not football IQ. Not even some off-field scandal. No, he cut Sanders for brand building. Apparently, if you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. The fact that Sanders could lead an NFL huddle with ice in his veins, throw darts with 73% accuracy, and post a 118.3 passer rating wasn't enough to outweigh the crime of having a social media presence. Let's be clear. This wasn't just, hey, maybe focus less on Instagram. This was a full-on football execution, according to people in the building. Stefanski delivered the news with cold, boardroom precision during a quarterback meeting, no less. No one-on-one in his office. No long speech about tough decisions. Just a surgical cut in front of the room, like a power play in a corporate drama. And here's where it gets really messy. The locker room immediately split in two. Offensive players, especially the linemen and receivers, were furious. These were the guys who'd been catching his passes all camp, feeling the timing click, watching him command the field like he'd been in the league for 5 years. They saw the chemistry. They felt it. To them, this wasn't just losing a quarterback. It was losing a leader. But on the defensive side, different story. A few veterans backed Stefanski. To them, it wasn't about talent. It was about message. Team first means team first. If the head coach thought Sanders' media appearances and growing personal brand were getting ahead of his football work, then they were fine with the decision. The problem is the fans didn't see it that way. The backlash was instant. Social media went nuclear. Hashtags, threats to cancel season tickets, even videos of Browns jerseys being burned in driveways, the whole 9 yards. And that was before owner Jimmy Haslam found out. Apparently, Haslam was blindsided. No warning, no heads up. He hears the news the same way the rest of us did, with his phone blowing up. By the time he got Stefanski on the line, the decision was already final. And the conversation that followed, let's just say it wasn't polite. Stefanski reportedly gave Haslam an ultimatum. Support me or find a new coach. That's not confidence. That's either a man who knows he's right or a man who just bet his career on being stubborn. And the craziest part, the front office wasn't even on the same page. GM Andrew Berry was said to be livid. He'd been pushing for Sanders to stay, even if it meant riding the bench a little longer. But Stefanski pulled rank, overruled him. Done deal. Here's the thing. I've seen NFL teams cut rookies before for culture reasons. But this one feels different. Because everything about Sanders screamed he's ready. His stats were there. His leadership was there. His teammates respected him. And the Browns just tossed it all aside. And not because he broke curfew. Not because he missed practices. But because the head coach didn't like how much time he was spending on his image. Let's pause for a second. This is the NFL. The same league that loves when its stars have marketable personalities. The same league that profits from highlight clips, interviews, and yes, even brand deals. We've seen quarterbacks juggle endorsements, commercials, and podcast appearances without missing a beat on the field. But somehow, Sanders doing the same thing was too much. Now, maybe Stefanski thought he was sending a message to the rest of the roster. Nobody's above the team. And maybe in a vacuum, that message has merit. But here's the problem. Cutting the guy who might actually win you games sends a different message entirely. One that says personal control matters more than talent. And if you don't think that's going to have ripple effects, you're kidding yourself. Because now the quarterback room belongs to Dylan Gabriel. Not because he beat Sanders in competition, but because the organization handed him the job. That's a dangerous position for a young QB to be in. The pressure's already sky high, and every single mistake he makes will be compared to the ghost of what Sanders could have done. The offensive players who were in Sanders' corner, they're professionals, sure, but they're also human. It's going to be hard to look at Gabriel and see him as a guy when they know the decision wasn't about football. Chemistry like they had with Sanders doesn't just appear overnight. And let's be honest, the optics here are brutal. This isn't just another name in the Browns' long, cursed history of quarterback turnover. This is a quarterback who looked like the answer, getting cut for reasons that have nothing to do with his ability to throw a football. That's how you lose a fan base. And yet, there's another angle here. If Sanders signs somewhere else, say the Rams, the Saints, anyone with a shaky QB situation, and thrives, if he becomes a player we all just watched in preseason, Cleveland won't just look foolish. They'll look incompetent. This decision will go down as one of the all-time blunders in franchise history. And we all know the Browns have a deep catalog to compete with. The reality is, Sanders isn't going away. His fan base is too strong, his game tape is too good, and his marketability is too valuable. Some team out there is going to give him the chance Stefanski wouldn't. And if he delivers, you can bet those clips will be playing on repeat in Cleveland, with every touchdown feeling like a jab straight to the ribs. Right now, though, the Browns are left with a fractured locker room, a skeptical fan base, and a head coach who just staked his reputation on proving a point. That's a risky hill to die on, because in this league, winning covers everything. And if the Browns don't win, if Gabriel falters, every loss will feel like a reminder to the quarterback they let walk out the door for image control. And when that happens, no amount of team-first culture talk will drown out the boos. The Browns didn't just cut Shedeur Sanders. They might have just cut their own future. The part people aren't talking about yet, the part that might be the real heart of this, is why now? Kevin Stefanski didn't have to do this before the preseason finale. He could let Sanders play out the stretch, fade the spotlight a little, then make a quiet move when everyone's focused on the regular season roster cuts. Instead, he pulled the trigger right at the height of the hype. That timing wasn't accidental. It was surgical. It felt like Stefanski wanted to kill the narrative while it was still growing, before it could take root so deeply that ownership had to step in. That's not just a football decision. That's politics. That's a man trying to control the story before it controls him. But here's the flaw in that thinking. You can't kill a story when the story is a person. Shedeur Sanders isn't a camp rumor or an overhyped practice squad hero. He's a brand now, whether the Browns want him to be or not. The more they try to silence him, the louder the conversation gets. And you can feel the unease bleeding out of Berea. Players whispering about how quickly the move went down. Support staff walking a little more stiffly because they know the building's on edge. Reporters suddenly circling for quotes like sharks because they can smell that something's rotting under the surface. What's even wilder is how this is messing with the Browns' identity. For years, the team's problem was not having a quarterback worth building around. Now, for the first time in forever, they had one who was lighting up practices, making national headlines, and giving fans something to believe in, and they cut him over focus. You couldn't script a more Cleveland Browns plot twist if you tried. And think about what this does to every young player in that locker room. What lesson are they supposed to take from this? That you could do everything right on the field, outwork your competition, earn respect from your teammates, and still get axed if the head coach doesn't like your extracurriculars? That's not building trust. That's building paranoia. It also puts a spotlight on Dillon Gabriel that I'm not sure he asked for. This is no longer about him earning the job. Now he's the guy who's replacing the fan favorite. Every incompletion, every stalled drive, every bad read. It's going to be judged not on its own merit, but against the alternate reality where Shedeur Sanders is under center. That's brutal. And while Stefanski might think to send a message about discipline, the unintended message might be even louder. That the Browns care more about optics than wins. That's a dangerous perception to feed in a league where your reputation among players matters for free agency, trades, and keeping your own stars happy. Now let's talk about the market ripple. Every GM in the league saw what Sanders did in the preseason. They saw the arm talent, the composure, the leadership. They also saw that Cleveland just handed them an opportunity. If you think there aren't phone calls happening right now between agents and front offices, you're dreaming. The Rams, the Falcons, even the Patriots, all have quarterback situations where a fresh, electric rookie could light a spark. And here's where it gets poetic. The Browns might have just set Sanders up for a bigger spotlight than he would have at staying put. Because if he lands in the right market, with a coach who embraces his brand and uses it as fuel instead of treating it like a distraction, the ceiling gets scary high. We could be looking at a situation where Cleveland doesn't just regret cutting him. They have to watch him win somewhere else and fast. Meanwhile, Stefanski's gamble gets riskier by the day. If Gabriel struggles early, that locker room divide is going to widen. The offense, already stripped of the QB they were building chemistry with, could start splintering. The defense might hold a line for a while, but resentment spreads quickly when losses pile up. And when fans start booing in your own stadium, that's when ownership's patience gets short. The kicker here is the Haslam factor. Jimmy Haslam doesn't like being blindsided, and he really doesn't like when the fan base turns on the team's leadership. He's an owner who's shown he'll make changes mid-season if he thinks it's necessary. Stefanski may have drawn his line in the sand, but he'd better hope Gabriel turns into a star immediately, because if not, that line could become a noose. And here's the wildest, most Cleveland thing of all. This could have been avoided. All it would have taken was a conversation, not a public scolding, not a media stunt, just a straight-up man-to-man talk about balance. I want you focused, I want you locked in, but I'm not here to kill your brand. I'm here to make sure it doesn't take over your football. That's it. Instead, the Browns chose nuclear war. Now we've got a young QB whose confidence might actually grow from this, because now he's played with something to prove, and in a league like the NFL, nothing's more dangerous than a talented player with a grudge. We got a fractured team, a furious fan base, and a coach who's put himself squarely in the center of the storm. The Browns could have been the team that believed in Shedeur Sanders before the rest of the league caught on. Instead, they might go down as a team that gift-wrapped him for someone else's highlight reel. And when that happens, when he's standing on another sideline under brighter lights, holding a playoff ticket, Cleveland will have no one to blame but itself. Here's the thing no one in Berea seems to want to admit. You don't just erase a player like Shedeur Sanders. Cutting him from the roster doesn't make him disappear. If anything, it makes him bigger. It turns him from a promising rookie into a full-blown myth. And myths spread. They get told in bars, on sports talk shows, and in every group chat where Browns fans live. You can already feel it happening. Every little clip from his preseason games, the 25-yard strike under pressure, the no-look quick slant, the way he ran the 2-minute drill like he'd been in the league a decade, they're all getting reposted with captions like, "We really cut this guy?" It's not nostalgia. It's outrage. And outrage has a long memory. The Browns didn't just make a personnel decision. They made an emotional one. And here's the danger with that. Emotions aren't rational. Fans aren't going to sit back and say, well, I guess the head coach knows best. No, they're going to replay that decision in their heads every Sunday, comparing whatever's happening on the field to the possibility of what could have been. And the possibility almost always wins in the imagination. Inside the locker room, the ripple effect is just starting. Even players who weren't close to Sanders now know that performance alone doesn't guarantee security here. You can win in camp, win in preseason, and still lose your spot if you rub the wrong person the wrong way. That's not just demoralizing, it's destabilizing. You think offensive linemen don't notice? These are the guys who spend all game taking hits for their quarterback. They'd started to trust that Sanders would make those hits worth it, moving the chains, rewarding their work. Now they're supposed to hit the reset button on that trust? That's not how chemistry works. And it's not like Sanders was some cocky rookie trying to sidestep leadership. He was already taking guys under his wing. That's rare. You don't often hear about a rookie QB telling a vet, hey, let's run that again until we get it right. But Sanders did it, and people respected him for it. Those moments stick. They don't vanish just because the depth chart changes. From a PR standpoint, this is a masterclass in self-sabotage. Think about the headlines of Browns who have been generating right now. Rookie QB revives Cleveland hopes. Browns finally find their guy. Fanbase united behind new leader. Instead, the headlines are about division, questionable leadership, and another quarterback controversy. This franchise has been allergic to stability for decades, and somehow they just managed to create chaos out of one of the most promising preseason stories in years. Now, let's talk about the league-wide perception. If you're a player agent watching this, you're taking notes. You're telling your clients, look, if you go to Cleveland, understand this. Performance might not be enough. Be ready for politics. That matters. It affects who wants to sign there. It affects who stays when their contract's up. And then there's the film. Every team has it. Every GM, every scout, every coach who needs a QB upgrade has already watched Sanders' preseason snaps. They've seen the timing, the mechanics, the way he manipulated safeties with his eyes. They've seen the poise in the pocket when the blitz came. You can't coach that into somebody. They either have it or they don't. And Sanders has it, which means this. His phone isn't going to stay quiet for long. Once waivers clear or a trade is negotiated, he's going to get calls. And when he does, the Browns instantly lose control of the narrative. They go from being the team that developed him to the team that handed him away. And that's when the real nightmare starts for Cleveland. Week 8, you're watching Monday Night Football, and there's Sanders in another uniform, throwing a game-winning touchdown. Social media explodes. ESPN runs a montage of his Browns highlights alongside his new heroics. The lower third graphic reads, "The one that got away." And your own fan base? They don't let you forget it. It's also worth pointing out that this wasn't a front office decision alone. This was Stefanski planting a flag. He's saying, this is my team, my culture, my rules. That sounds strong on paper. But if the team starts losing, that same flag becomes a stake people hang you on. Because here's the cold truth. NFL locker rooms will tolerate almost anything if you're winning. But if you're losing, every decision gets dissected. And this will be dissected with a microscope and a megaphone. Let's not ignore the irony either. The very thing Stefanski cited as a problem, Sanders' brand building, might end up being what keeps his career afloat while the Browns struggle. He's already got the name recognition, the media savvy, and the fan engagement. Now, he just needs a jersey to wear. And when that happens, the Browns will have to live with the fact that they didn't lose him to injury or to retirement or even to an expensive free agency battle. They lost him because they didn't like how he was managing his own success. That's going to haunt them. What makes this even more maddening is that the Browns had the rarest thing in football, hope with proof, not blind faith. Not, well, maybe if this guy pans out. No, they had evidence. They had tape. They had teammates vouching for him. They had fans already invested. And they still found a way to walk away. The rest of the league just took notes, not on Sanders, but on Cleveland. And in this business, your reputation sticks longer than your roster does. The Browns just told the world that they're willing to toss aside talent for control, even if it costs them wins. And in the NFL, nothing costs you more than that. If you want, I can push this even further into how the first game post-Sanders is going to become a make-or-break moment for Stefanski and Gabriel, because that's where the pressure cooker explodes. The first game without Shedeur Sanders is going to feel less like football and more like a trial, with the entire fan base serving as a jury. Every snap Dylan Gabriel takes is going to be under a microscope, not because he's a bad quarterback, but because he's stepping into a role that wasn't earned on the field. It was handed to him, and fans know it. That's the difference. When a QB wins a job outright, the crowd can rally behind him, even after mistakes. But when the perception is that he was chosen because of politics, every incompletion is going to sound louder. Every 3-and-out is going to feel like a personal insult to the people in the stands. And here's the nightmare scenario for Kevin Stefanski. If Gabriel starts slow and the Browns fall behind early, the chants are going to start. We want Shedeur. Maybe not right away. Maybe not in unison at first. But you'll hear it. It'll grow. And once the fan base turns its voice into a weapon, it's almost impossible for a coach to drown it out. That's the corner Stefanski has painted himself into. He's not just coaching a football game anymore. He's managing a public rebellion. The media won't let him hide, either. Every post-game presser will have some version of the same question. Do you regret cutting Sanders? And no matter how many times he says no, it'll keep coming, because losing erases all explanations. Inside the building, the tension will only grow. Wide receivers who thrive with Sanders' timing will start to quietly lobby for more say in the passing scheme. The offensive line, who've been buying time for a QB who got the ball out quick, might not be as eager to sell out on risky blocks. If the chemistry's not there, even the defense will feel it. Because if the offense can't sustain drives, they're the ones stuck gassing out in the fourth quarter. And you can bet Shedeur's absence will hang over the locker room like a ghost. It's not just about the plays he made. It's about the energy he brought, that quiet confidence, the way he never seemed rattled, even under pressure. Those things are contagious. You don't replace that by swapping names on a depth chart. From a lead perspective, other teams will be circling like vultures, not just for Sanders, but to take advantage of Cleveland's instability. Opponents will smell the chaos. Defensive coordinators will crank up the heat on Gabriel, testing his composure, knowing the crowd will turn on him faster than they would a homegrown hero. And rival GMs will be calling the Browns veterans, planting seeds for future trades. The most dangerous part? This could become the storyline of the Browns season, overshadowing every game, every stat, every coaching decision. It won't matter if Gabriel throws for 300 yards in Week 5. If the team's losing overall, the narrative will always drift back to the kid they cut. And the more Sanders succeeds elsewhere, the more Cleveland's own failures will be amplified. Kevin Stefanski made this a hill to die on. Maybe he thinks holding the cultural line is worth it. But the NFL is a results league, and if those results don't come fast, his decision to let Shedeur Sanders walk might be the single move that defines and ends his tenure in Cleveland. Because when you strip away all the excuses, this wasn't about talent. It was about control. And in the NFL, control only matters if you're still standing when the clock hits 0.